to today's webinar. I really appreciate you joining us today. Today's webinar is Winning with Data, Einstein Analytics Apps for Manufacturing Sales Teams. This is being presented by Tom Lovell, who is our Director of Customer Success at Hilo Studios, as well as David Gibbons, who is the Senior Director of Product Marketing and Analytics at Salesforce. Now, before I pass this over to David and Tom, just wanted to go over a little bit of housekeeping for you. Although you are all muted today, you do have the ability to ask questions and just use the chat and question pane, which is located just near the bottom of your GoToWebinar control panel. Now, another alternative, if you would like, is to use the raise your hand feature. Just simply click on the icon in the control panel, and what I'll do is I will reach out to you using the chat feature to determine if you would like to be unmuted to share your question with the group. At the end of our presentation today, we will address your questions as much as we have time for, but if we are unable to get to your question, we will be sure to have someone from Salesforce and Hilo Studios follow up with you. In the meantime, like I said, if you have any questions or concerns, I am here and more than happy to help, so please feel free to utilize the question box. Once again, thank you guys for joining today's webinar, and with that, I'm going to pass it over to you, David.
Thanks, Elizabeth. Great to be here, and thank you everyone for joining. So Einstein Analytics is one of the newer offerings from Salesforce. It's descended from something you may have heard of in the past called Wave, but now it's Einstein Analytics, which is actually a combination of a broader set of technologies that encompass both mainstream analytics as well as AI technologies. And in fact, it's one of the fastest growing clouds at Salesforce. In fact, one of the fastest growing companies within the analytics business as a category. It obviously is very well adopted by people who are looking to do analytics around CRM-based use cases. So folks who are looking to do analytics that involves data that already resides within their CRM from Salesforce. But what we're seeing now is that folks from a variety of different industries are looking at use cases that require integrating external data and combining that with the CRM data to get some new insight that helps drive their business forward. And that's really what prompted us to schedule this webinar today, because Hilo Studios has created an application that's designed to do exactly that for manufacturing applications and to help people use the data that's in their CRM combined with data elsewhere in their organization to get an even better insight into how to be more productive with their selling activities. So with that kind of broad statement of our direction in mind, I'm going to hand it over to Tom, who's going to show us exactly what they've done and how that works for people who are involved in selling on behalf of manufacturing companies. Tom.
Thank you, David. So good afternoon, good morning to everybody on the line. Thanks for attending, and hopefully this will be a well-received webinar. We really feel strongly about the product, our product, as well as Einstein Analytics in general, and feel this is a tremendous value for a lot of folks out there. So first introduce Hilo Studios. So Hilo Studios is an ISV app exchange partner of Salesforce that was put together about 1.5 years ago. And this is really around being able to facilitate a use case that we kept on seeing over and over in manufacturing industries and professional services and med device companies with Einstein Analytics. And what that use case is really a gap between what we're forecasting and predicting in opportunities versus what is actually happening in downstream systems such as ERP, and bringing that information together and having it very, usable, be able to give the sales teams the insights into what's really happening with their customers like they've never had before, and put it in context in the Salesforce CRM that they're typically used to. So I'll get plenty into that as we go forward, but that's this summer, and we were able to graduate from it a few months ago. And really, what this particular Salesforce incubator was around was facilitating and enabling folks with an AI focus to start getting access to Einstein core technologies to be able to take their own apps on the App Exchange and take them even further. So we were able to attend that, and as you will hear about as I go forward, we've started working with several customers in a pilot phase around using some of the Einstein capabilities outside of just analytics to further enabled this use case. And I think there's some pretty exciting things that are coming down the pipe and that we're enabling at manufacturers. So why is this issue coming to bear? Well, it's really about the fourth industrial revolution and how it's transforming manufacturers. And it's really the confluence of tons of different data. It used to be just, mainframe terminal created data back in the 90s and even the early 2000s. But at the advent of cloud and moving off-prem to, on-prem servers to off-prem, you start adding social elements to it, mobile data. Now we are looking at IoT data and everything being online. There's just all this data that is being brought together for manufacturers, and it's a very difficult direction as far as understanding what data is important, what data is going to help me run my business better, what is going to help me sell better, what is going to help me recognize my revenue better. And at the end of the day, we're also looking at how is AI and the information that we're all generating, how can AI help me to do all that? And there's plenty of customers that we've talked to, big and small manufacturers, and they're all dealing with this issue. And hopefully you'll see as we go forward, we have a solution that can help a lot of them to get this off the ground. So what is that issue? It's really the customer insights gap. So what ends up happening in a lot of manufacturers is that opportunities and accounts are used in Salesforce, in their CRM, but then there's a gap, as shown in this slide, that there's a lot of operational things that happen after that opportunity is booked. That opportunity is booked, and then it kind of goes into another system, and the sales teams, the sales operations teams sometimes don't have any ability to see what's going on there. And this affects their ability to really forecast, as well as understand exactly what's going on with their customers. So they're not able to understand the full picture of what's going on with their customers or their territories, because they're losing a lot of this information. And sometimes that information is only given back to them in Excel spreadsheets or something like that. So they're beholden to applications and systems outside of Salesforce, which they're trying to use more and more to manage their sales, because that's what their executives are telling them to use. We made this investment in their CRM, but it's not being used the way they want. Not to mention, I have to manage everything. There's no automated intelligence, and it's not optimized for mobile. I'm not always in front of a desktop, and I'm not able to see things from my iPhone or my iPad, and is really being a burden on how I run my business. And what ends up happening is they're really just not analyzing a lot of the data. Even though they're trying to be a data-driven organization, they just don't have the data to analyze. They're not being able to use that as part of their day-to-day activities. So that's why at Hilo, we went forward and working with the Salesforce Einstein Analytics team to start using their technology to hopefully start bridging this gap. And all that great stuff about Einstein Analytics, whether it's native to Salesforce and connected to the enterprise, where there's already integrations to bring in some of this ERP data, we're also able to use some of the intelligence that's within Einstein Analytics, whether it's tools like Einstein Discovery. Of course, if any of you are familiar with Einstein Analytics, the way they've been able to use denormalized data sets instead of traditional data warehousing technologies, it's given a more of an interactive, real-time feel to all these sales teams, these folks that are trying to get real-time feedback on what they're trying to look at. They're able to now get it through a visualization, and it's just bringing them closer to their CRM and eventually, hopefully, the business processes. At the end of the day, just being modern and mobile, so allowing them to utilize things on their iPhones, their iPads, being able to manage their business, even going into a customer of theirs and being able to pull up exactly what they've sold them, all the inventory they have going forward, exactly what they have future contracts with them, and seeing how on target we're hitting those contracts. All those types of conversations are things that we're trying to bridge the gap with using Einstein Analytics. So let's talk about the specific use case that Hilo helps with. So the real problem for manufacturers, like I said earlier, it's lack of customer intelligence. And the lack of customer intelligence kind of manifests itself in different ways, but that one way is inaccurate forecasts. So traditionally in opportunities, there's a close date in mind, but when you're coming to an agreement with a supplier or a retailer or a distributor of your product, you know that shipment, you're not going to ship all that product right away. It's going to happen over time. So you're going to have a contract for the length of 10 months, and you're going to ship 100 units every month over those 10 months. With the opportunity close date, you can't really see that going forward. So you have no way of really telling the rest of the business exactly how you think this revenue is going to hit our books going forward. So you're really not able to not only see what's going on with your business, but articulate that to the rest of the business. And unfortunately, there's no out-of-the-box Salesforce apps that focus in on this actual revenue that's being generated over the course of time or within several different periods. And this causes a gap between sales to operations to finance. So sales teams may not be able to communicate with demand planners. So the demand planners are starting to create their own forecasts or start guessing as far as what they should actually put together production schedules. And then finance might have their own calculations and own algorithms as far as what they're forecasting from a revenue standpoint for that business. So maybe there might not be a gap. Maybe the gap is being filled with an Excel, but traditionally that isn't a very effective and efficient way of managing your business, and you end up just being trapped in this data manipulation, data munging solution that isn't it's holding you back from actually really working with your customers and trying to put things forward. And at the end of the day, if there's a gap in the data and a gap of the information coming back, it can lead to account attrition. So what does that account attrition happen? How does it happen? Well, it doesn't happen overnight. Typically, customers will start throttling back on ordering patterns and things like that. So yes, they might still be doing their opportunities, but they might not be following through with those contractual obligations. And if you're not seeing that as a salesperson, how do you react to that and making sure that the customer stays on board? So these are all really symptoms of some actual problems. So what that ends up doing is you start seeing these types of terms thrown around by operations and finance, but it's really about low revenue realization. So what I predicted or I forecasted that was shipped over the course of those 10 months, did it actually come to fruition during those 10 months? If it didn't, I'm not hitting the targets that I had set out, and ultimately, it's bad for the health of the business. Not to mention, you're not able to see why revenue is not being recognized. So if we didn't ship out over those 10 months, why did it not ship during those 10 months? Was it something about the account? Was it something about the product that we were selling to them? Was it something about that individual AE that he actually was sandbagging and actually was going to happen over 12 months, but in order to hit his quota or his bookings targets, he'd try to put it in within the next 10 months. So there's all these different types of nuances to it, as well as low forecast accuracy. So if you're running your business on forecasts, which most manufacturers do to make sure they have the raw materials or they have what they need in operations to hit their production targets and be able to capacity plan, they want an accurate forecast. And if you're not be able to put together an accurate forecast over those periods, the whole business is going to suffer from sales on down. So that's really the solution that we've tried to bring to bear, is to help sales and sales operations teams in Salesforce be able to articulate and hopefully bridge the gap to this problem. So how do we go about this? It's really about three main pieces of our solution. So that's a blended analytics. So that's using Einstein Analytics as bringing our Salesforce data, the opportunity, account information together with those actuals that are coming out of our ERP systems. So blending in at the account or opportunity level allows us to really see, okay, this is what I sold, and this is how we recognize the revenue against that. And at some manufacturers, I shouldn't say just some, but a lot of manufacturers, we're also having quota targets based on that revenue dollars. It's not always just about bookings. It's also based on what actual revenue was actually accrued over time. So sales teams sometimes don't have access to that quota information in real time. They're waiting months or after that period closes to see whether they actually hit their quota. What we're also doing with Einstein Analytics through the Hilo app is being able to bring that information so sales teams can actually make decisions around how they drive opportunities within the period that they're trying to hit their quota. And again, having this native in Salesforce in context in the way they traditionally work in Salesforce cannot be understated, because if they have to, they see their accounts in a specific name or they're used to their territories, but then they have to sign in and go into an Excel spreadsheet where the accounts and opportunities or even product names are different than what they're traditionally seeing, they have to do translations. And if they're taking time away from actually selling to their customers, it's not good for the business. And not to mention, you know, the great thing about Einstein Analytics, and really a real major reason why we built on this, is that it's about actionable insights. It's one thing just seeing the analytic, but then being able to take action on it. So if I'm not going to hit my quota, how do I take action on that directly from the analytic to make sure I'm pushing towards hitting my quota within that period? So I'll show that in a little bit here as well. And the power of AI and Einstein. So how do I start better predicting forecast accuracy and getting past realization issues? So is there something about the account? Is there something about the industry the account is in? Is there something about the individual entering the forecast of their opportunities? Is there something about the product that you're selling that is affecting forecast accuracy? Why not take your actuals and your Salesforce data over time, be able to put it through machine learning, and be able to start telling you while you're putting together new opportunities, putting together new forecasts, telling you this is how accurate we see this is going to be as you go forward, based on historical trends, based on nuances within your data. Being able to then manage by exception rather than just trying to manage your whole book of business at the same way is really something we're seeing teams get a lot of value out of. At the end of the day, it's all about increased revenue realization, because that, and if those of you not familiar with that, revenue realization within GAAP principles, it's really about determining the health of the business. Stakeholders are happier if you're hitting your targets, and therefore allows you to invest back in the business, versus if you're not being able to hit your targets, you're not able to hit your revenue, obviously shareholders are going to be very skeptical about whether the business is actually healthy or not. So that's what we're trying to prop up within our solution. So first, getting into the details of this. So we've developed what we call Hilo Plan, which is really an AI-powered forecasting solution leveraging Einstein. So this is really about being able to allow sales teams to be able to enter bottom-up and top-down forecasts. So if those of you are familiar with collaborative forecasting out of Salesforce, very, very good solution. However, it doesn't allow you to plan out your opportunities over time, or it doesn't allow you to forecast at the account level. It doesn't allow you to forecast at the product or product family or product line level. It doesn't let you sales teams forecast at the territory level. So what we've done is created on the force.com side, we've created a light package that'll allow you to enter and manage your forecast as a team, to then be able to pull that in and be able to start doing some better forecast scoring overall, utilizing Einstein Analytics and some predictive methodologies as well. So this is something that we see a lot of manufacturers are doing in Excel or some other planning solution, but it's very one-sided. It's not very collaborative. It's not linked to current opportunities. And that's what we've tried to be able to do, is give them the ability to do these bottom-up forecasts and then aggregate them, be able to push down to downstream teams like demand planning or finance to utilize into their own forecasts. We've also built on Hilo Navigator, which is what we call it that because it really navigates your analytics. So using Hilo Plan, as well as your opportunity account information, as well as your ERP information, we're bringing that together in a really self-service way for not only just individual contributors, but also managers of sales teams, as well as execs. So it's really trying to give them the ability to see their customers or their territories or their overall business unit or company by the way they see things. So it's also about identifying trends, not only just what happened in the previous period, but what's leading to those trends in those periods. And then it's being able to compare all these different scenarios around revenue. So there's actuals, there's forecasts, there's budgets and quotas. There might be different levels of forecast because there might be a forecast at the beginning of the year, and then there might be mid-year forecast on that account or that product line that you also want to be able to look at. We're allowing folks to collect all that information in one comprehensive self-service dashboard or dashboards to be able to help them be able to see what's going on with their business so they can be proactive rather than reactive to things that happened possibly previously. And then utilizing all those great visualizations that Einstein Analytics gives you, whether it's white space analysis, being able to understand cross-sell, upsell on current opportunities, providing early warnings for customer attrition. And at the end of the day, it's about maximizing revenue. So giving insights to current opportunities and then closed opportunities, understanding what's really going on from a transaction standpoint to maybe get in there and start driving the business that way. So, and then we've also developed some tools around, dashboards and analytics around revenue realization. So understanding your forecast accuracy as well as your forecast variance, to be able to dig in there to understand what's leading to those, what, different dimensionality, is it, again, individual contributors that's leading to forecast variance? Is it specific product lines? Is it for specific plants or anything like that? That's what we're trying to give them insight into being able to get in front of those things before they lead to bad things happening in the business. So also what we've developed is a solution called Ask Hilo. So think of this as something as a step up for traditional folks that don't want to use a visualization tool. So sometimes folks don't even want to go through a click path and be able to filter and sort on a visualization or click on the visualization itself and filter that or anything like that. They just want to ask a simple question and they want to get an answer back within the visualization. We've also done this for a couple of customers where, we have sales teams, they like Salesforce, they like analytics, but they don't want to go through all of that whole process. So they just want to ask the question, get the answer, and then be able to go on with their business. So I'll show that a little bit in the demo that I have coming up forward, as well as talk about how we're using this, whether it's with Einstein Discovery or Einstein Prediction Builder, how we're utilizing those types of tools to help with this revenue realization credential. So with that, I'll switch over into the demo. So when we talk about a real self-service revenue intelligence platform, it comes off with several different use cases. There's the use cases that come up with embedding dashboards into your Salesforce org. It also comes into being able to work and interact with those dashboards, as well as having the ability to take things out like into the Analytics Studio and deep dive into specific things that you're seeing within the data. And that's where we start getting into the different personas of folks and how they utilize the information that's being shown to them. So in this particular use case, I've logged in as an individual contributor, and right within my own homepage, I'm able to see what's going on with my business within the quarter, or in this particular scenario, the last 12 months and my quota that I'm trying to hit for those 12 months. And bear in mind, not every organization looks at the same type of data. So I have account, brand, product lines, but what we work with within our Hilo solution is these are really templates. And these are templates of what we've seen is most effective in a lot of different organizations, but it's not something that you're going to get out of the box and you're going to be able to flip on the switch. We work with is, we traditionally work with customers over time very quickly, but to be able to get them up and going, utilizing this, but then filtering on and sorting on what they want, that are most interested, what they are most interested in. But the idea here is being able to see the data and be able to look at what's going on, whether it's your whole book of business or within an individual account here. So if we wanted to look at Zula Fidel and be able to see exactly what's going on over time within that account, again, this is looking at your revenue data versus what necessarily just your opportunity data. So allowing them to be able to see what's going on first thing when they log in the morning. Now, remember earlier I talked about Ask Hilo and what Ask Hilo can give you. So again, this is about asking a question and getting something back in return. So if I'm an individual contributor, I don't want to click on anything, but I just really want to figure out what I should focus in on today. So what we've been able to do here is allow the analytic to focus in on downward trending or upward trending accounts that I should be focusing on. In this particular case, AutoKing is an account that's been trending down over time, quarter over quarter, actually down 20%. A little bit concerning here, that we should actually do something about it. But the reason I picked it is because it actually has an opportunity that can make up a great deal of what we've done before. And I'm able to click on this opportunity and bring up information here and realize this opportunity was actually a high probability late stage opportunity, and that's why Ask Hilo is telling me to look at it. What I can also do from here is using all that great stuff about Einstein Analytics is be able to use action into insight and actually create an activity or go directly into AutoKing's account page. So within the AutoKing account page, I'm able to see exactly what's going on with this account, not only within the specific period I'm looking at, but I'm also be able to see it trending over time. So I'm able to actually see the actuals coming in from my ERP system versus my forecast. I'm also able to see my revenue over time is right next to my open opportunities. And I can also start seeing what my closed opportunities were and my open opportunities over time were. But in this particular use case, I'm able to see my actuals versus forecast. So this forecast, like I mentioned earlier, can either be loaded from Excel or some other type of third-party system to compare versus your actuals, or you can utilize our Hilo Plan module to be able to forecast against your opportunities or accounts as well. And I'll just quickly show you how this might look. So if I'm able to open up this opportunity for Bernhardt, Schoen, and Doyle, I can see here that we actually have an opportunity that we may just want to actually forecast starting in February and maybe push that through January, let's go July. And I can actually create a forecast that represents this opportunity or my account, or I can leave these blank and create an account forecast, or I can actually use this to create a forecast maybe at the business unit level, or I could do it at the brand level, or I can do it at the SKU level. So I can come in here and pick the SKU that I'm most interested in, maybe the Gen Watt propane tank, and I could put in my forecast and be able to then spread this out over time against a forecast over the amount of months that I want to look at. And then it actually stores this forecast, and that's what's being brought back in to this, and then it's aggregating at that account level, or it can aggregate at the product line level, or it can aggregate at the opportunity line level. And what we're doing here is pulling out a particular forecast for the bottom up. And what I'll show as we get into different visualizations, how we're looking at different scenarios around the forecast as well. So I can actually jump into the Analytics Studio to start showing you a little bit around how we're breaking this down by different personas and the different types of analytics that can be important or relevant to different leaders, managers, or account owners within an organization. So when you're talking about a leader, that traditionally is somebody that's only looking at a very quick observation. So green, yellow, red, how am I doing, whether it's over the last year, whether the last quarter or the last month, and whether I'm on point to hit my budget, or whether I'm going to be trending down over that period as well. So this is really a quick hitter for an executive to be able to say, okay, green, yellow, red, green, I'm good, yellow, there might be a problem. And then obviously using Einstein Analytics, I can start sharing this with other folks in the organization. I can post their chatter feed, I can share the actual visualization, or I can make an annotation on it to tell them to take a look at this as well. We can also do different things for the executives or anybody as you deem fit within your organization to see, but they can start seeing what their trends are over time with these revenue scenarios. So in this scenario, we're looking at the actuals, our budget. So the budget, maybe that's coming from our finance team, and then comparing that against forecast and being able to see exactly how they compare over time within my book of business. Again, I'm looking at this as an executive right now, but using the role hierarchy and traditional things that Einstein Analytics uses, we're only able to see what our security allows us to see. So this would automatically be able to filter based on those nuances. So you wouldn't have to think about creating, 10 different dashboards for the same analytic for different folks. It automatically is going to render to what they're able to see and what their book of business is. We're also able to see other trends around revenue as far as, when it comes down to owners, maybe it's by business unit, being able to see exactly how we're selling our against our business, and being able to see the Auto King or other accounts that we're doing very well in, or possibly we want to start focusing on accounts that we're not doing very well in. So maybe on an influencer, we want to see accounts we're not doing very well in, the worst performing states or segments around my business, worst performing brands, whether it's by pure revenue or growth over time. So if we're looking at our accounts that are downward trending, this can start identifying those accounts that might attrit in the future. And we can start focusing on those types of folks. As well as, like I said before, white space. So this is something we see a lot of organizations and manufacturers want to focus in on. So what can I cross-sell and upsell? So maybe it's by individual contributor, who's selling across these brands? And maybe Brian Jones isn't selling much of our Acme Bronze brand. We can start identifying where he is selling it and where he isn't. So obviously South Carolina, we haven't done a whole lot there. So maybe that's an opportunity for us to start pushing and selling more of the Acme Bronze product line there. So we can also then hop into our manager types of visualizations as well. So those managers being able to look at their entire book of business. So everybody on their team, who's doing the best, whether it's by revenue or straight quota attainment. We can also see the largest growing accounts. So maybe if we're low or have a large gap to our actual quota attainment, maybe these are the types of accounts we should focus in on with the types of opportunities that might get us closer to that quota gap. We also want to be able to give these folks the ability to coach within their teams, so to be able to compare individuals against the overall team to start seeing, maybe their overall deal size is too small and they should start focusing in on larger deal sizes. Maybe it's along certain months, or maybe it's along certain segments of the business that they're not doing well on. But it's really an opportunity to coach or then actually share best practices across teams to be able to push larger revenue generation. And like I said earlier about revenue realization trends, we also wanted to be able to give folks, whether it's forecast variance. So if we're using Hilo Plan or we're using a forecast coming in from demand planning or Excel or something like that, we want to be able to compare these things. So maybe I want to focus just strictly on forecast variance and start understanding what over the course of the last year has led to such a large variance. I see in July there's a large variance there, so I can start understanding what accounts led to that variance. It looks like we have a very large variance across the Acme Bronze line at this account. Maybe I want to see who the actual owner of that account is, so I can actually start working with these folks to start working with Ronald to say, hey, what happened here? What happened with this account? Why are you so off? And allows us to really start working towards better forecasting, as well as actioning on things proactively rather than reacting to revenue problems in the future. So this is, I just want to provide a quick demo. At this point, I wanted to conclude this part of the presentation and wanted to open it up for questions. Elizabeth, have we had any questions during the course of the presentation?
Yes, actually we have, and as a reminder, if we are unable to get to your question today, we will make sure to have someone from Salesforce and Hilo follow up with you. Also, the recording and slides from today's webinar will be made available to you later on today on our website. So Tom, one of the questions that came in, actually I have probably about 4 right now. One of them is, are there any Salesforce license prerequisites in order to purchase Hilo?
Yes, actually there are. So if you're familiar with Einstein Analytics, there is a platform specifically for analytics that allows you to bring in third-party data. Obviously, all this is driven off actuals coming from typically a third-party system. So that is a prerequisite to be able to have those licenses available to utilize the Hilo app.
Okay, and then another one came in. Can you describe how you bring actual revenue into your apps?
Okay, so this is kind of the $64,000 question. There's many different ways to bring it in. So we see organizations already using maybe Connect and bringing it into custom objects into the Salesforce side, and we can utilize it that way. When we start with organizations, sometimes they don't want to go through an automated process, so maybe they just want to load CSV actuals to get the analytic going. We see it that way. We also see organizations wanting to use API to API calls. We've done implementations that way, as well as utilizing ETL tools. So if you're familiar with a lot of the cloud-based ETL tools, they have most of them have Einstein Analytics connector, and we will use whatever the organizational standard is. Plus, we also have a white label agreement that we can utilize our own ETL tool to bring in your analytics information as well. So it's any of those different combinations, and if you think about it, that also leads to how complicated of the implementation is. So right now we have a quick start package. It usually takes about 2 weeks to set this up, all the analytics and the integrations. But obviously, if you're integrating a CSV file, that is a lot quicker than if you're trying to do a full-blown ETL integration, because sometimes that has a lot more people involved, as well as the complications of bringing the data over. So to bear that in mind, how complicated you want the integration will definitely impact how long it takes to get the Hilo app up and going.
Okay, and then by Connect, can you clarify, did you mean from, Salesforce Connect, example, I think it's OData and external objects, or does data need to be copied into Salesforce?
So as long as it's copied into Salesforce, so Einstein Analytics utilizes data on the Salesforce servers. So it has to be brought over and then stored on the Einstein Analytics platform to then be used by Hilo. So that can either be brought in directly into Salesforce, and then there is a data flow that brings data from your Salesforce org into Einstein Analytics. So that's how we might go about it in that way.
Okay, great. And then you had said, I think you may have already answered that, but another question came in. How quickly do companies actually start seeing the value from this app?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's always soft and hard benefits with any type of software implementation. We traditionally see just exposing the data within a couple weeks, using our templates and getting it up and going. People start getting value right away. Their analytics and comparisons, and that sales teams usually traditionally have to wait months or even quarters sometimes to get that information. Exposing that to them right away, they start seeing value. Within 2 weeks we start seeing.
Okay, good. And then actually somebody had joined late, and they're curious. When you spoke about it briefly earlier, how does Hilo integrate to the other non-Salesforce systems?
Okay, well, that's like I pointed out just a second ago. It's really about whatever the best choice is for your organization. So if they're already stored in objects in Salesforce, we can bring in that information. So if you've brought SAP already connected to Salesforce org and you have it stored in custom objects, we can bring it in that way. Or we can do a download, a CSV file. A lot of organizations maybe already have a data mart set up with this specific data that they're using for some other type of analysis. We can get a CSV load and pull it into Einstein Analytics initially to get that value going right away. And then we'll start talking about that more of an automated integration. So that information is coming in daily, weekly, monthly. How do we go about that? You can use ETL tools, or you can do custom scripting. It really, whatever is best and reflective of what your organization can do. We've used all the ETL vendors out there, whether it's Informatica, Talend, Dell Boomi. And then, like I said, we also white label our own to be able to bring that information in if that's necessary, something necessary with your particular organization.
Okay, that looks like that's it for the questions right now. Yes, to Joe, we'll make sure that Tom does reach out to you, so thank you. And if anyone else would like to ask a question, please feel free to do it too. I'll give it another maybe 10 seconds before we conclude the webinar.
So I just like to say, that in closing, this has been we saw the proliferation of data throughout the manufacturing organizations, but this is really a rudimentary problem that's been an issue for organizations, for years. Ever since they got out of a certain stack or have multiple applications across, on-premise, cloud-based, whether it's Salesforce, ERP systems. So this is a problem we know that's been around for a while. It's not a silver bullet solution, but just we've put together a lot of best practices that the solution can get you up and going, and really be able to help sales teams navigate these waters around understanding the revenue and revenue recognition a lot easier than they've ever had before.
Thank you very much, Tom. And as you guys might see on the screen, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to Tom at tom@hilostudios.com. Thank you very much for joining us today. We really appreciate it, and be on the lookout for a link to access today's recording and slides. Feel free to share them with your colleagues as well, and have a great rest of your day.